Um, for the record, everybody, we're recording this, and welcome. Thank you for coming on. As you know, we're encourage and welcome questions as we go along here. So if you care to ask a question as the presentation goes along, you can do it either in the chat box or raise your hand in the Q&A, and we'll gladly see if we can spend some time answering the question. If someone could just, hey Pete, thank you for being here. Are we broadcasting live? If you could just say hello in the chat box, that would be great. We can't really tell whether we're broadcasting until somebody tells us. It looks like Zoom is pretty bulletproof, but we've had glitches before. There you are. Thank you, Pete. So a little backstory about how this came about. As you know, sometime back before coronavirus, we were going to start doing all-day pitch sessions in New York City rather than our traditional lunches, which Pete often, shout out to Pete here, has hosted us at his law firm. Then coronavirus hit, so we hadn't even had a chance to do our all-day pitch sessions. And Shan and Teacherix, is it Teacherix?
Teacherix, that is correct.
Teacherix was one of the qualifying candidates. And so we're happy to have him here with us today so we can talk about what he's doing with his platform. As it's often said on CNBC, we're coming to you from multiple locations. I'm in Florida, Shan's in Istanbul, and Lubov is in Ukraine.
Yeah, that's right.
So welcome everybody. And so I'm going to hand it off to Shan now, and I'm sure we'll have other people coming in, but we might as well get started.
Thank you so much, Arthur. Really appreciate the opportunity for us to present Teacherix to all your friends. So I'll give you a brief introduction about the company. Teacherix basically started last year. We established in November in US. Before that, we were working in Istanbul, Turkey. I came to Turkey many years ago as an ESL teacher, an educator, and I spent 3-4 years teaching at various different schools, and then set up a company, recruitment company for educators, because there's a huge demand for foreign educators and ESL teachers in this part of the world. So we started progressing, and then last year we realized that there is a huge demand and we need to grow the platform. We switched the whole business onto the platform, which is Teacherix. And in November, we set up the company in Delaware and New York. And that's when we were in touch with Arthur to visit for the pitch session in March. So because of the flights and everything, there's no flights with the US. I think they will open up at the end of this month. We are where we are. Luba, my colleague, and also 5% shareholder in Teacherix, is in Kiev, and I am in Istanbul until all the flights resume. So Teacherix is a platform which hire educators for K-12 international schools all around the world. And we take teachers from various different countries. It doesn't matter where they are. It is very easy for them to fill out their details on the platform, and then the school searches for the appropriate teacher that they're looking for, the qualification, there are certain criteria and search that they can do. So I will go through with the pitch deck if everyone is ready. I see the numbers are increasing. But if everyone's here, Arthur, if you think it's ready, I can start with the pitch deck. Okay, there's no response.
Yeah, I can't assure you that all those people are me and my doppelgangers, even though they're coming in under my name. We did wrong with the Zoom. We make mistakes all the time, but we welcome them all. And please, yes, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Chat, okay, no, I thought it was questions. All right, cool. Okay, here we go. So, Teacherix, analytics recruitment vetting platform. There are roughly about 80 million teachers registered at this stage in the world. And UNESCO estimates that another 69, 70 million will be needed by the 2030. These are just some numbers and some estimates that we have put up here for you. So I'll give you a brief, as I said, the overview. We started off beginning with ESL, English as a second language instructor or teacher, which is there's a huge demand for that, English being the communication language of the world, and not just in Turkey and surrounding countries, but China and other countries, Middle Eastern countries. All these countries have a huge demand for a teacher that would come up and teach English to their students. So this is how we started off, and that's how I started my career as well. And then we got into academics. So academic teacher is one area, and language teacher is another one. Last year, we did close to $670,000 in revenues, and we placed teachers in 7 different countries. We placed close to 390 teachers, and this is where we decided to move everything to the US to grow much bigger. All right, so as I mentioned, the market is huge, not just for language teachers, but also for academic instructors and teachers throughout the world. The main issue, I mean, there are few companies in our market niche, although when you talk about Glassdoor, Indeed, the huge Monster.com, those are recruitment companies that recruit everyone. They're not very specific. For education field, you have to have a very specific niche, or I would say a very specific area for recruitment of teachers. So there are a few companies that are doing that, but there is an issue. When we hire a teacher, let's say from US, from Texas, from California, from somewhere else, and that teacher wants to work in Dubai for about 2-year contract. So the issue is that there is not, at this stage, there's not a company that can vet a teacher. They can vet on degree verification, they can vet on criminal background check, they can vet on soft skills, they can do many other things, but they cannot find out if the teacher is socially, culturally, and religiously compatible to work in Dubai Emirates, or let's say Saudi Arabia, or China, or Turkey. And one of the examples would be, for example, last year we hired a teacher from Canada, and she came here and she worked at a school, but she was very, very pro-Kurdish. So, which is, Turkey always have issue with Kurdish. So in the classrooms and stuff, she was taking a lot of sides with Kurdish, and Turkey is suppressing Kurdish people and all that stuff, and it didn't go very well with the school. So we end up replacing the teacher. These things all across, like China, if you have affiliation with Tibet, or you start talking about in favor of that, in Middle East, Shiite and Sunni. So these issues, we realize that teacher comes up and he works at a school. After a month or 2, the school would call us and say, we need to replace the teacher because it's not working out for whatever reason, or the teacher is not socially adaptable to the environment. So we decided that this was one of the most costing for a school to replace a teacher. It costs around $16,000 now, because they pay for the flight tickets, they pay for housing, they cover insurance, and then it's difficult to find a teacher mid-school year. Any other profession, it is very easy to replace. Doctor, engineers, you can find them any months of the year. But for educator, because their month starts in August and it goes all the way to June, and hardly you can find good teachers. If they're available around December or November, there has to be a reason. Either they broke a contract or they didn't get hired. So those situations makes it very tough for schools to replace them. And we decided, because we have extensive experience now in the recruitment sector, and we realized that these issues, if these issues could be addressed, we would have a lot more schools and teachers willing to work with us. So we started working on a solution, and I started getting data scientists together and started looking at how to develop crawlers, how to develop algorithms to check and teachers could voluntarily, when they create their profile on the website, they could click on that and say, check my suitability. And then it would crawl. I mean, I cannot go in detail, but I'll just give you a synopsis of the situation. So it would crawl all over in social media postings, pictures, pick out words, and see if this person is suitable for a certain country or not. And it would give that answer that your suitability is not for Saudi Arabia, for example. You should go to Spain, or Turkey, Spain, or Italy is perfect for you. And that's what we are in the process of creating. So these are just some of the stats, and everyone will have access to these. We can, Arthur can send these to everyone. So these are just some of the stats of what are the requirements, what kind of teachers are needed every year in numbers of teachers. So roughly about, just for the English language speaker, just China itself takes about 130,000 to 140,000 teachers every year for the schools that they have. That includes language schools, that includes language academies, K-12, government school, private school, all included. All around the world, this number tops more than 400,000 teachers just for language. And if you put academic and language teachers, and if you include replacement, if you include new teachers, new enrollment, like there's more students in a classroom, so they need to add more classes. If you include the retired teachers and replacing them, it hits close to 3.5 million all over the world. Again, these are some of the stats that you will have access to view. I will go over very briefly the business model. So when we put everything on the platform last year, this is how we went through the whole thing. So you have teachers are, by the way, free. There is no charge for them to become a member, to create their profile. If they feel there are some improvements, self-improvement, training in cost or consulting, and that is the average, which is showing teacher subscription. But they can go with the free subscription and they have access to everything with that as well. Teacher recruitment fee. So when we successfully place a teacher with a school, we get paid between $2,000 and $3,000 US per teacher, depending on various different conditions are there, depending on the school, depending on what we agree upon. But its averages between 2 and 3, and I based it on an average of $2,000 per teacher. That is once in a year. It's not monthly, it's one time. So if you compare with the US, it's very low cost. US takes anywhere between 15 and 25% of the yearly annual salary. And as you guys are all familiar with what's going on around the world, and because we have close to 10,000 registered teachers on the site, and we received a lot of interest from schools and students and teachers to have online lessons as well. So that's what the model shows. It's not there on the site yet, but we're looking to develop that because there's a huge revenue stream. I will say this with authority because I'm in touch with the Ontario Education Ministry and boards, and in New York as well, speaking to the Department of Education. It will never be 100% online, but it will be a hybrid system. So most schools and K-12s are looking at 50% to 70% in-person classes, and then the balance 50% to 30% would be online classes. So the online trend will continue, but I don't think it will ever be 100% because humans and kids are very social people. They need to be interacting with others. They cannot just sit in front of the laptop. So anyway, working those numbers out, those are the ones, those are the details about the online lessons. School registration fee. So we charge a one-off $650 US for schools to sign up on the site. That takes care of our due diligence part, because just like we do due diligence on teacher, a teacher is trusting us from Scotland or from London and is flying all the way to Spain to work at a school. So they depend on us, and we make sure that the school will pay the salaries on time, the school is good, they will provide the insurance, the work permit, and all the legal documents. So that's just the fees for them to sign up for us, and it's very minimal fee. And then we have professional development, and we're looking to improve on that. We had some training and some sessions in Canada and US, which they paid $3,000, $4,000 to fly over there and get trained. Obviously, with the current situation, we're looking at a couple of certificate programs with Google, so teachers can become very well versed with the technology, because there was a huge issue when everything went online. A lot of teachers weren't ready and equipped for that. So that will be the professional development in that sector.
Sean, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The revenue and business up to this date, is it accurate to say that you were able to build that revenue and business without the algos and the crawlers, so to speak, profiling the teacher candidates, and that this is the next iteration? Is that
That
accurate?
is 100% correct. That is 100% accurate. Everything that's done to last year, the numbers that we shared, didn't have all these on them. So it was just with the signing up of teachers, paying the getting paid from the school for recruitment process, and the one-off fee, and some of the training that was done. So this is without that. You're right.
And what have you seen in terms of that standard business, let me call it that, in the throes of coronavirus and so forth? Is everything come at a standstill like many other businesses, or are you still
So
active?
in the first couple of months, it did. Let's say the March, April, and then mid-May, schools realized that they need to get going. So we started seeing movements from now we're in June. So last 1 month we have been receiving and we're signing contracts now with the school. So things are picking up now for next year. So it may be in-person classes. Some states, for example, in Washington, some of the states that I'm speaking to my friends, they're not 100% sure if schools will open up in September or not. But at the end of the day, teachers will be required. Either it's online or in person. And with the database, with the qualified educators that we provide, we've been approached by a couple of online schools as well, and they were asking to negotiate fees and some sort of agreement we can drop with them so we can provide teachers. And before I forget, we have signed an agreement with a Chinese school chain, which is close to 2.5 million US dollar for 1 year. And they are willing to take up to 100 teachers a month. My colleague Luba, that's online, she's the one that's head of the recruitment. She manages the recruitment team. So she's working on that process right now. They haven't opened up the airports for foreigners yet, but soon they will, I think a couple more months. So the whole recruitment process does take about 3 months time. So it's good that we just started now. So we see a lot of movement now, Arthur, from schools coming back and looking for educators.
Great, that's super helpful.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll proceed. Anyway, the market opportunities. So just to give you guys some numbers here, we have, all around the world, close to 1.2 million schools. That includes public, private, not just international schools, just everything. And 40,000 language academies, 8 to 12,000, I would say, international schools. And the number of, as you can see, the population, and you can see the English language learner, it's close to 2 billion. So marketing-wise, up until this point, or until last year, we never had the budget because we've never raised any funds. The whole business started from day one, and it had to be profitable for us to afford the whole team and work and office and everything. So we never raised any money, so we never even went into any marketing campaign, something very small. So we're looking into, once we do get funding, we're looking into web-based approach, advertisement, search, social media, and a lot of ambassador program works out. So when we can pinpoint an ambassador in certain university that has teaching department, and once those teachers graduate, they can list with us, and we can start finding them jobs. An average speaker of English would fetch close to 2,000 to 2,500 US dollar net. If, let's say, they graduated yesterday, they got the degree, they need to have the degree with them. They got the degree and they want to go and find a job somewhere in the world. We offer them some options. So a starting point is around 2,000 to 2,500 US dollar net. That's, net to them. The flights are paid, housing is provided, medical insurance is provided. So they pretty much, if they're not a big spender, they can pretty much bank about $15,000 to $20,000 in a year. And that's pretty good for a fresh graduate, because in the US, most of the time they're searching for jobs and trying to pay off their student loans and everything, and they don't get to, saving money stage. So with this, we're thinking about having an ambassador program. in different colleges. And the site, once we make this changes to the site, it'll be a lot more sophisticated, so numbers would be much more higher. And we want to have a reference program also on the site to help us with that. I'm going to touch briefly on the competition. So there are few companies which are in the education space hiring of teachers. For example, Search Associates, very old, 25 years old, Go Overseas, Teach Away, Go Abroad. These are the main competitors. Now, the edge that we have, even with them, because we know them really well, we even help out each other. So they do schools, they do police check, they do FBI checks, they do background checks in different countries, degree verification. But the sensitivities that I mentioned, none of them have that. None of them has went there. So there's two businesses in this model. One is just a job board. The schools can go and pay $100 or $1,000 and post their job on the site, and they get teachers, and they have to go through the whole vetting process, which is very expensive for a school because, yes, it's cheap to post a job for $500 US, but when you receive 500 resumes, to vet them and go through them is very expensive for them. It costs them a lot of money. So that's one option. Second option is Search Associates and, for example, Teach Away. They do very customized recruitment like what we do. But again, they don't have these three different things that I talked about, these sensitivities. So that's where we feel the edge to moving forward, because if we can save school a lot of money in the beginning when they get the teacher, and that is the right teacher, and that could blend in with the culture and with the country and with everything, then it's perfect for the school. It saves them money in recruitment each year. These are just some of the example. Of course, you guys will have, these are links are there. You can see these are some of the companies that have, either raised money or been sold or been acquired. So these are in the recruitment space, it's been very active. And VIP Kids, they're basically English online, and they have just raised, I think last year they did a 500 million raise, and year before that it was 200 million. So there are a few companies in that space that have raised money and raising money. This is just a little bit, about the team that we have. Luba is with us right now. She started off with us 2.5 years ago as a search and selection consultant, but with her abilities in recruitment and managing the team, she moved up, and we ended up offering her some shares in Teacherix, and now she's with us as a partner as well. So the funds needed and the proceed of funds. So technology development, as you can see, 250,000. Marketing, team expansion. So we set up in US last year, as I said in November, we'd like to build that small team. We need to have a team of 3 to 4 people. Obviously, the team in Turkey will stay because the labor is a lot more, economical in this part of the world, especially for developer. We've hired data scientists, we have hired developers, so it's easier to keep them here. In US, they charge a lot more. So, but with the business development side, we need to have 3 or 4 people. US obviously have excellent growth hackers that can develop. And we haven't tapped into the US market yet. Our site is ready for US with a little bit of tweak. For example, addition of a little bit of curriculum and things like that on the profile. But US has 145,000 K-12 schools, close to 5 million registered teachers. So it will be an excellent space to get in, and that's where we're planning to have a little bit set up an expansion. And then general working capital. We are open to, we have received, as Arthur knows, I was there before the coronavirus situation, and I met up with a couple of investors, and we discussed on the valuation and everything. But I would be more than happy to, if we can have an understanding on convertible note or safe. Now,
So
I'm ready.
You were answering the question about the cap there, right?
Yes, I was just answering. Yeah. So because of the valuation, it's sometimes very difficult for a new company. But I mean, if you went with last year's what we did, and with the multiple of that, I mean, we're between 7 and 10, 7 million to 10 million valuation. But it's been told at times it's higher. Sometimes they say it's lower. That's why, if possible, I would like to go with a convertible note or safe agreement. I'm open for questions, but before that, if we can introduce Luba, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So Luba's here as well, and she is the one that handled recruitment. So if you guys have any questions, we're both here to answer.
Great. So what's your experience? And I know I asked this in a different way, but it would be. I'm super curious, but it would be instructive to see the adjustments being made to recruit people for online courses and the level of activity that you're seeing now. I mean, just to be curious about humanity and what's going on in society. What do you see happening in terms of what schools are doing, even if they're not going to open up in September? Is your level of activity, once it picked up, approaching where it was prior?
Yes, they have, and they are all, because they're not sure of the government decision if they will be able to open or not, but they cannot stay away from their business, which is providing education. So they have adapted to a lot of movement on LMS space, which is the learning management system. Many schools have bought those softwares. A lot of schools, even in the US, were clueless about online education. So they're trying their best. Even there's training going on during summer. Used to be 2 months off, but people are getting trained because the educators are not really experienced and trained to teach online. I mean, we have even heard complaints that some teachers could not even use Zoom properly. So they were, they're going in with the Google School and they're training them. So the sector will pick up if they don't open in-person school. Online schools, online education will be there, and teachers will be needed. So that sector will pick up and it will start.
So of the competitors that you mentioned earlier, which ones are most like you, to oversimplify the question?
I would say Teacherix. Search Associates, very old company, old thinking. I mean, even when you go on their website, it's not, a lot of things are not updated. So they will probably stick with the plan that they've been doing. They're probably comfortable in their own skin and, the percentage that they have. But the Teachaway, companies like us, which are changing technology, upgrading technology, I would say probably close to us would be Teachaway, teachaway.com.
Yeah. And Lubab, your recruitment efforts, are they for the schools mostly or teachers? Where do you focus?
I'm more focused on teachers because I'm doing the interviews with teachers before I send them to the school. So first I pre-screen the teachers, make sure that they are suitable for the school and that they're energetic. For example, if it's a primary position or a kindergarten position, I make sure that they will be able to teach those kids because it requires lots of energy. And sometimes I also communicate with schools as well. For example, if they need some help with the contract or if they need some help with the communication with the teacher. So I mean that part as well.
Yeah. And the activity, one of the things that I'm just thinking of intuitively is that your best marketing people are the teachers that you've placed, right? So, and they probably spread the word to their colleagues. Is that something that's happening? And
that's happening a lot. Sometimes even we have some teachers that are sending their brothers and sisters to us. So it's like family becomes a family business for them as well.
yeah.
So once one brother goes to China, he brings another brother, another sister to China as well.
They call us and they tell us, my brother's qualified, he needs a job. So Luba handles all that. So
Very cool. And so, can we talk a little bit about, I think you intimated it, but largely this has been self-funded by either revenue or yourself up to this point?
that is correct. That is correct, yes. So from the day of the inception, it was a little bit of money that I had saved up in my teaching. I worked a lot, and a little bit help from the family, and then we got the business going. And immediately I had received a contract for 65 teachers. So you can imagine I set up the company and everything, and 5 days later I signed a contract for 65 teachers. And those revenues really carried on the beginning days because it was close to $180,000 or $70,000 back then. The conversion rate was different with Turkish lira to US dollar. So that's how I carried on. And then from one school, the word got to second school, and we started working. We concentrated mostly in Turkey because, you know, Turkey has a huge need for second language, as you know, this region. And then 2018 is when it dawned upon, because we were getting calls from schools in Dubai, in Qatar, and asking, you know, do you only have Turkish teachers? Do you also have foreign teachers? Because we were Turkish based. Yeah. This is when we went to US. So now when it's a US company, they understand. But we've been hiring foreign teachers since, you know, day one. So it was always the native English speaker teachers would come from those 7 countries, and then the academic teachers would come from all over the world.
I'm imagining that teachers are really concerned about where their career is going to go, right? I mean,
yes.
Everybody's concerned about all these things, but as a teacher, you don't even know whether you're going to get hired back or whether they're. I mean, I'm imagining that's a reality. No,
it is, and also there are some regulations which is beyond their control. Let's, for example, our colleague Luba, she's in a very nice and lovely place, Kiev, but you know, because the flights, she went there and then the flights were blocked, and the flights are still hasn't resumed yet, right? So these teachers also stranded at different places because they went for a semester break in Feb and sometimes in March and stuff. So this is also another situation that happened. And then when situation happened, the country started doing repatriation of citizens. So a lot of people left on the first flight to their home country,
right?
Thinking that the crisis will get really bad in third world country or these countries. So that is also because those teachers cannot come back. So yes, there is a huge chaos. And this is why we see a lot of movement right now. And the schools are calling us now and saying, can you please help us? Can you cover if those teachers cannot make it back to Turkey? Can you cover? Can you help? So we started, like I said, since last month we started. And, you know, holidays are over. We're working really hard now to meet those requirements. And because our database is close to 10,000, it's not huge, but still it's easy for us to see, and we can search if someone is needed in, let's say, Doha, Qatar. We can search and see if the teachers are there or not. So we are constantly in touch with teachers as well, and we get feedback where they are, where they're located, what's their plan for next year. Because, you know, we want them to complete their contract. We don't like teachers to break contract. So once they complete the contract, it's up to them to sign another contract, or they're looking for better offer. I mean, it's one of the reasons, Arthur, they travel, you know, overseas to go and get out of their comfort zone is some of them like to, you know, learn different cultures or learn about the world. And if you were to do this out of your pocket, it will cost you a lot of money. But here you go, a school pays for your ticket, a school pays for your housing, and then you get salary, and then you get to enjoy the culture and live in the culture as well. So, you know, it's like a win-win for most of the educators. And we're not very strict when it comes to the language teachers. They just have to be a bachelor's degree holder. Doesn't have to have an education degree. It's not a requirement, because they're just teaching language. They're not really getting into the grammar part. For grammar part, they use indigenous teachers, you know, local teachers that can teach in their language, because there's a lot of grammar to explain. Unlike the US, where, you know, we don't learn grammar, we just kind of listen to the teacher, and we, you know, until grade 9 and 10, I think that's when they drill on the grammar so much. But in this part of the world, it's from grade 1, they start drilling on the grammar, and they use local teachers for that. So it's very, you know, kind of, you can say walk in the park for some teachers if they're good with their working habits. They do have to get up in the morning. They do have to go to school, you know. But other than that, it's like a saving thing for them. Like if they get a job in Qatar, it's close to $5,000 a month net. So that's good money, and that's saving for them. You know, imagine coming back home after 2 years and you've got 100 grand in the bank account. You haven't paid for anything. They paid for all your tickets, your housing, you and get a driver, you know. So facilities range from country to country.
What have you discovered about the regulatory issues as it relates to the US in terms of how, and this is, I don't mean to be negative, but it's an interesting question, not because I'm asking it, because if you're using algos and using the crawlers, is there any regulatory issue
in US, the US you need to ask for permission. So even when I do background checks on teachers, we
Yeah.
ask for consent from them.
Yeah.
We need to ask that. I mean, you can do a generic one. Anyone can go online and do it. But if you need to do intense, you have to ask for the permission. So same thing with this. As I mentioned when I was going through my pitch, that there will be a button where they said, I willingly. I mean, this is for the benefit of the teacher as well, because then the site will tell you, Arthur, Saudi is not the country that you should go. Spain is more compatible to you, or Greece is more compatible to you, or Italy is more compatible. So it'll give you that option as well. But when they have to give permission, and although we're not pulling any credit checks on them, but we're very consistent with GDPR, because in Europe as well we work with European, we pick up teachers in schools there as well. So this will help them, and the school will be able to see that as well. This is something which is helping. A lot of times teachers do complain, like, I read online and Google and stuff, but I didn't think the life would be like this, and they want to go back, and it costs them more money and costs schools more money. So if I answer your question correctly.
Yeah, totally, for sure. Yeah. So is the site in multiple languages now?
No, site is only in English. And one of the reasons we keep it that way, because remember in the beginning, we started off with English as a second language teacher. So if the teacher is even from a different country and cannot speak English, it, beat our purpose. But now that we expanded to academic, basically educators from all over the world, English is a language that they all use. So that is something in when we expand into other languages or other countries, we would be converting the site, having multiple languages as well. But right now it's only in English.
Actually, having in English is sort of a filter, right? If you can't read English, then you're not a candidate, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because even if, let's say, you wanted to work at a school in somewhere in Europe, and we're believe it or not, but there's many countries in Europe where they can't speak English, or they don't want to. So what happens is even the HR are experienced enough, or they have the second language capabilities to do the interviews. So English is the language that they use across all over the Middle East, in Europe, South America, Turkey, everywhere pretty much.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're still on the use of proceeds here. Assuming that you get your $1 million, let's say, how long will this take, conservatively?
Okay, so one of the good things that we have, and once we have something signed up, we'll be willing to share those contracts. We signed a contract with the Chinese chain school, which is close to $2.5 million for 1 year. But it happened right around November. And that's when China was getting into, Wuhan was getting into all these issues. So we could not. The process takes about 3 months from the day Luba interviews or search finds a candidate. And then we go through the process, the school interviews, we file the paperwork, we get everything done. It's roughly about 3 months before the teacher can land into that country. So we started again now because the contract is still valid, and we cannot meet. They're looking for up to 100 teachers a month. My team is very small, 9 people. Even if I triple it, I cannot do 100 teachers a month, because to hire 100 teachers, she's smiling because she knows she has to go through all this. To hire 100 teachers, you have to go through 1,000 or 1,500 resumes and close to 800 interviews, because not everyone is selected by the school, and not everyone selects the school also. So this is why we feel that and this is one Chinese chain school, and the reason is they came to us, they found out about us, and they visited us last year in Turkey. They came, they signed a contract, we started working with them, and then they said we need up to 100. Now they're pressuring us because they know that in 2 months, 3 months, the border is going to open up, and the schools most of them are out of teachers, because US did a huge repatriation flights from China back to US. They took all the teachers back, or most of the people back. So they're pretty sitting empty right now. They're dry on foreign teachers. So that's why the school has been calling us and saying, is there a way that you can speed up and all this? And we're saying, we're trying our best, because we're also, stuck in the whole predicament. So these assessment, and when we do artificial intelligence algorithm, what it does is it just increases the work that we're putting human resources right now, like 10 people to do the job. It will be done. The selection will be done on the site, and we'll be able to narrow down. Still, the human factor will be there, but they'll be focusing more on connecting the teachers with the school, not so much time with select and search, which consumes a lot of time for us to find the teacher and select and search. So this is why, to answer your question, I would say within 4 to 6 months, we would be, we'd be up and running and getting invoices paid from Chinese school.
Yeah, very interesting. Have you talked to any of the usual suspects in the VC world that fund educational enterprises?
I'll be honest with you, you're the first one that we spoke when we spoke last year, and we never looked at this because, we were thinking when we were working in Turkey, things are good. It was 2018 that, I realized when I started getting requests from other countries that this is something, if we put it on a platform and we add a lot of intelligence to that, in addition to the human, this is a worldwide business. So I'm in 2018, my vision so at that time we were working with schools, so we never went to any VCs or investors. It's until last year, I think November or October, when I was July, October, I can't remember. Last year when I was in the US, I met up with a couple of investors and we started thinking about valuation, and they said, we need to understand, do you have a setup? Is the company US? So that's when we did the company in US.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we put everything in US, and the Turkish company is now owned by the US company. So all the revenues that's generated in Turkey, after paying the local salaries and taxes, will, go to the US company, Teacherix.
Yeah.
And Teacherix will be worldwide.
Yeah, very cool. So is there any closing remarks you'd like to make? And I want to thank you for allowing me to ask all those questions. It's super interesting to me.
I'd just like to thank you, first of all, for giving us this opportunity, and everyone that's been online and listening to us. We would like you to be part of this excellent journey, and we have done even before this George Floyd issue and what's going on in the U.S. We were just talking, Luba and I was just discussing this yesterday, that some companies came and they said, oh, we're not going to use the word native English, or we're not going to show pictures, and and these are very well-established companies working for the last 20 years, and then they made those comments, and we were just smiling and saying, we already did that in 2019, so we're already in compliance with. We understand that there is, even in the education field, there is a selection, there is a discrimination process, so we've already tried to avoid that. We're in compliance with U.S. regulation. We're in compliance with general, I would say, human regulation, in a way that we focus on teacher. If the educator is qualified, if he has the credentials, if he passes that, he should be employed, regardless of his, race, age, and all that discrimination that we see overseas. So I would just like to say that we are in compliance with that, and we would love to have your investors become part of this education sector, which is growing very rapidly, and with the times changing and everything, and we feel that we could really accomplish the vision that we have dreamt for Teacherix.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We are recording this, and we'll do a little edit and then put it on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel and share it with you also, Shan. You can share it as you like and use it to talk to your investors. And then we'll be sharing the list of people who registered and participated and send them off to you, so you can send them the deck or whatever you need to have in advance of the deck, and be happy to put you in contact with them. And then I mentioned the VC thing because we happen to be close to a couple of education VCs. VC may not be the right money for you, but they're good people to know depending on what happens, and we'll be happy to do that. And so thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We'll see you on the next one, and we're super interesting. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. See you, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.